Today I'm giving you the actual top 5 foods that the research backs for burning belly fat specifically, not just general weight loss, ranked by how strong the science actually is behind each one. Number 5 is probably already in your fridge. Number 1 is going to surprise you, because it's not what most people expect. Let's get into it. Number 5, berries. And I mean actual berries, not the fruit snacks that borrow their name. Blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. The reason these land on this list specifically for belly fat is a combination most people don't put together. They're loaded with soluble fiber, which slows down digestion and keeps your blood sugar from spiking, and they're also packed with polyphenols, plant compounds that studies have linked directly to improved insulin sensitivity. Why does that matter for belly fat specifically? Because insulin is the hormone that tells your body to store fat, and it tells it to store fat preferentially in the visceral region, the deep abdominal fat wrapped around your organs. Better insulin sensitivity means your body isn't getting that storage signal as strongly or as often. One study following participants over several weeks found that regular blueberry consumption specifically improved insulin sensitivity in people who were already insulin resistant, without any other changes to their diet. That's a real, measurable mechanism. Not just berries are healthy, so put them on the list. And honestly, this is one of the easiest swaps on the entire list because berries work as a replacement for things you're probably already eating. Swap them in for a sugary yogurt topping, a sweetened granola bar, or even dessert a couple nights a week, and you're getting the fiber and polyphenol benefit without adding a single new habit to your day. Number 4, leafy greens. Spinach, kale, arugula, whatever you actually enjoy eating. Because the honest truth is, the best leafy green is the one you'll consistently eat. The mechanism here is almost embarrassingly simple, but it works. These are some of the lowest calorie density foods that exist, meaning you get a huge volume of food, which triggers real stomach stretch satiety signals to your brain for almost no calories. That sounds too basic to matter, but there's actual research behind it. Studies on calorie density and appetite have consistently found that people naturally eat a fairly consistent volume of food regardless of its calorie content, not a consistent number of calories. So when you replace some of your plate with something low density like leafy greens, you tend to end up eating less overall without consciously restricting anything. There's a secondary benefit too. Leafy greens are high in magnesium, and magnesium plays a direct role in regulating cortisol, the stress hormone that specifically encourages visceral fat storage when it's chronically elevated. I'll be honest, this is the one people roll their eyes at, because eat more vegetables feels like the most obvious advice possible. But the reason I'm including it isn't the generic health halo around vegetables. It's specifically that volume-based satiety mechanism, which is one of the more consistently replicated findings in appetite research. It's not about willpower. It's about physically taking up more space in your stomach for almost no calories, which changes how much you naturally reach for afterward. Number 3, Greek yogurt, and specifically the plain, unsweetened kind, because flavored versions can sneak in enough added sugar to cancel out most of the benefit. 2 things are happening here at once. First, Greek yogurt is unusually high in protein for how few calories it has, and protein has what's called a high thermic effect of food, meaning your body burns more calories just digesting it compared to carbs or fats. Somewhere around 20 to 30% of the calories in protein get burned off just processing it. Second, and this one's less talked about, Greek yogurt contains live probiotic cultures, and there's a growing body of research connecting gut bacteria composition to how efficiently your body stores versus burns fat. Certain probiotic strains have been shown in controlled studies to specifically reduce visceral fat over periods of 8 to 12 weeks, independent of any other dietary change. It's not a magic fix on its own, but combined with the protein effect, it's genuinely one of the more evidence-backed everyday foods on this list. One thing worth flagging here, because I fell for this myself for a while. Check the label before you buy. A lot of Greek yogurt on shelves has added sugar that can hit 15 to 20 grams per serving, which quietly cancels out a meaningful chunk of the metabolic benefit we're talking about. Plain, unsweetened, and adding your own fruit, like the berries from number 5, gets you the actual research-backed version instead of a dessert wearing a health food label. Number 2, oats or chia seeds, if you want an even more concentrated version of the same mechanism. This is the one I actually mentioned wanting to talk about specifically because there's a study I think about a lot. Researchers at Wake Forest tracked adults over 5 years and found that for every 10 grams of soluble fiber someone added to their daily diet, they gained almost 4% less visceral fat over that period compared to people who didn't increase their fiber intake. Just from fiber. No calorie restriction, no exercise change required to see that effect, though obviously combining it with those things helps even more. The mechanism is that soluble fiber forms a gel-like substance in your gut that slows digestion, blunts blood sugar, spikes the same way we talked about with berries, and also feeds specific gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds that have been shown to directly suppress appetite hormones. Oats give you a solid dose of this fiber in a normal serving, and chia seeds pack even more into a smaller amount, which is why so many people add a spoonful to yogurt or smoothies specifically for this effect. What I like about this study specifically, compared to a lot of nutrition research, is how boring the intervention actually was. Researchers weren't giving people some exotic supplement or an extreme protocol. They were just tracking normal dietary fiber intake over 5 years and watching what happened. That's about as close to real life as nutrition science gets, and the fact that a nearly 4% difference in visceral fat gain showed up from something as unremarkable as fiber intake is exactly why this one earned the number 2 spot instead of getting buried lower on the list. Number 1 is eggs. I know. Some of you just paused the video because you grew up hearing eggs would give you a heart attack from all the cholesterol. That advice is outdated, and more recent research has walked most of it back. Dietary cholesterol from eggs has a much smaller effect on blood cholesterol than we used to think for the vast majority of people, with large-scale reviews now generally treating whole eggs as a neutral to positive part of a healthy diet for most adults. But here's why eggs earned the top spot specifically for belly fat. There's a study that compared people eating an egg-based breakfast versus a bagel breakfast with identical calories, and the egg group reported significantly higher satiety and ended up eating meaningfully fewer calories at lunch without being told to restrict anything. That's the protein and fat combination in eggs directly triggering satiety hormones like PYY and GLP, one more effectively than a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast does. And because that effect specifically reduces how much you eat later in the day without any conscious effort, it ends up being one of the most consistently reproducible effects on this entire list. Not because eggs contain some magic fat-burning compound, but because they change your hunger signaling for hours afterward. There's also a practical reason eggs beat out other high-protein breakfast options here. Most people can actually stick with them long-term. A lot of optimal breakfast advice fails not because the science is wrong, but because nobody wants to eat the same bland thing every day for months. Eggs are cheap, versatile, and take about 5 minutes, which matters more for actual results than any theoretical mechanism does, because the best food on this list is worthless if you stop eating it after week 2. So here's how I'd actually put all this together into a normal day, because a list is only useful if you can picture eating it. Eggs for breakfast, maybe with some spinach cooked right into them, which knocks out numbers 1 and 4 before 9 a.m. Greek yogurt with a spoonful of chia seeds as a snack, which covers numbers 2 and 3 in one sitting, and berries somewhere in there. On the yogurt, in a smoothie, or just on their own. That's all 5, without needing to build some complicated meal plan around it. What I want you to actually take away from this isn't, eat these 5 foods and belly fat disappears. None of these are magic. What they have in common is that each one is targeting a real, specific mechanism: blood sugar regulation, satiety hormones, gut bacteria, calorie density, thermic effect of pause, and stacking foods that hit multiple of those mechanisms at once is genuinely one of the more evidence-backed approaches out there, way more than most of the extreme stuff that gets pushed as the secret to losing belly fat. And honestly, that's kind of the point of ranking them like this instead of just listing 5 random foods. Once you see the actual mechanism behind each one, you can swap in whatever version fits your life. Don't like blueberries? Use raspberries. They hit the same fiber and polyphenol pathway. Not a yogurt person. Kefir does something similar. The specific food matters less than understanding which lever it's pulling, because that's what lets you actually build a version of this list you'll stick with instead of abandoning after a week. If you want, let me know in the comments if you actually try this for 30 days like I did. I'm genuinely curious whether other people see the same thing I did, and which of these 5 you already had in your fridge before watching this. And if this helped you understand the actual why behind these foods instead of just another generic list, hit subscribe, because I break down the real research behind stuff like this every week.